Welcome back to Grace Sunday Nights. If you're visiting with us, there's something very important that you need to know. You need to know that we are all about relationships here at Grace Sunday Nights. Everything that we do has the idea of helping people build relationships with each other and specifically with God. My name is Josh Gallagher, and it is great to have you here. One way that we want to connect with you relationally is actually through something we call our connection card. It looks like this. You can find this card under the seat in front of you, and we use this card for a number of different things. First, if you're visiting with us, this is your free ticket to coffee. Now, if that doesn't get you motivated, I don't have anything else for you. All you have to do is fill this out, and if you're a first-time guest, you can drop it in the box as you leave, or you can stop by our guest services counter, and somebody will be there to greet you. And when you give them this card, they will give you a free Stork coffee coupon. When you walked in, you maybe noticed that we sell coffee before and after the service. And we do this not because we're looking to make money. We do this because it's a great opportunity for people to connect, because when we have something in our hand, especially coffee, we talk a whole lot better. And on the back side of this card, if you have any prayer requests, please let us know. We know that this life is extremely difficult at times. So give us the privilege and honor of praying for you in any way that we can. So please do us that favor. Also, this past week, I took a look into the future. Guys, I need all of you to look up here right now. Guys, I have good news for you and bad news. The good news is you still think you've got it. The bad news is no one else thinks you do. I'm sorry. Ladies, I have good news for you and great news for you. The good news is you still think you've got it. The great news is everyone else still thinks you've got it. And as I was looking into the future, I said, I'm going to take a look at our pastoral staff to see what they look like a couple years down the road. And I started with our worship pastor, John Cantu. That's what he looks like now. But in the future, this is what I saw. John is still rocking the man bun. It doesn't matter if it goes out of style. John is committed for life. And I decided to take a look at myself. And I discovered two things about myself when I looked into the future. First, I still like cornrows. And second, I'm still in school. I have no idea why, but I'm still in school. And last but not least, I took a look into the future of our Connections pastor, Sean Lee. And I am very happy to announce that Sean still has his same personality. We only have one life to live. That's why we're going through this series entitled Upgrade. And we started last week with asking this question: why do I exist? There is always a motivation for our action. There is always a reason for our behavior. And if we're going to upgrade anything, whether it's quitting smoking, losing weight, growing in our relationship with God, it has to start from a correct motivation. Then once we have the right motivation, we can move on. So last week, I asked people, why do you exist? And if you missed last week's message, you're getting part 2 this week. You need to go back online to roswellgrace.com, click on the watch button, and you need to go through this message, because before you upgrade anything, you have to have the right motivation. And I asked a couple people this past week to text to me the answer to this question. Here were some of the responses that I received. One person said, I exist to lead others to Christ and to share God's word with them. Another person said, to glorify God and enjoy him forever. And one more person said, to show the glory of God, to preach the gospel by making disciples of every nation. These people have a very clear understanding of why they exist. And now that they know why they exist, they can move on to the next step, which is what? There is always a why behind what we do. And last week we talked about upgrading our why. This week we're going to talk about upgrading what we do every single day. And if you want to live a full life, you have to understand you can't have a why that's not in alignment with what you do. You can't say, I want to glorify God, and that's your big why, but then what you do every single day has to do only with your glory. You will never fulfill that calling. But what you need to do is create alignment. So why you are here is in alignment with what you do every single day. And we're going to look at this on 3 different levels. The first thing that some of you maybe need to consider doing is you need to upgrade nothing you do. You need to upgrade nothing you do. Because everything that you're doing right now with your profession is in complete alignment with what God has for you. And you're in a perfect position to glorify Him for the rest of your life in exactly what He has called you to do. I want to share a story with you that of a man that was ready to upgrade everything, but Jesus says, nope, I don't want you to upgrade anything. The story comes in Mark 5, and I want to read it for you. If you have a Bible in front of you, or you can take out your Bible app. In the dark blue Bibles, it's on page 1558. In the light blue Bibles, it's on page 1529. And we're going to read about a man, and Jesus didn't want him to upgrade anything because he was in the perfect position to glorify God with where he was at. It comes in Mark 5, 1 through 17. They, Jesus and his disciples, went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. We're going to find out a little bit more about who this guy is now in verse 3 and following. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. To say this guy is in a bad state is an understatement. He's living in the tombs. He's cutting himself. What we're going to read later, he's probably naked. This is his life. But then everything changes. Verse 6. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of that area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, of about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank and into the lake and were drowned. I would think this is a pretty good day. This man's been released from these spirits that have bound him probably for years. But not everyone thinks this is a good thing. Verse 14. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told them about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. They didn't want Jesus around anymore because what he was doing made them fearful. It was outside of their understanding. It was outside of what they thought was normal. So they asked him to leave. Then there's this amazing interaction between the man that was demon-possessed and Jesus. Here's what it says. As Jesus was getting into the boat, he was leaving because they wanted him to leave. The man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus said, no. This guy was ready to upgrade everything in his life and leave it all and follow Jesus. And Jesus says, no. This is weird. The obvious question is, why? Why wouldn't Jesus want him to follow? Here's what it says in the next verse. When Jesus says no, he says, go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been. So the man started off to visit the 10 towns of that region and began to proclaim the great things that Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed at what he told them. Jesus didn't want him to physically follow him because the man was in a perfect position to glorify Jesus where he was at. And when Jesus said, nope, you're not coming with me, you're staying here, and go and tell people what has happened, he went and did that. So maybe for you, you're a lot like this man, and you need to upgrade nothing you do because you're in the perfect spot to glorify God. And I want to share with you an example tonight of someone who's in a great position to glorify God here in Roswell doing what they are doing. But before I introduce this person to you, I want you to watch this short video.
And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to sit up all night with a newborn colt and watch it die, then dry his eyes and say, maybe next year. God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-combed pullets, who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer. It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners, somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk, somebody who'd bail a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh and then sigh and then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer.
I'd like to introduce you to Jack Pirtle. Jack lives here in Roswell, and he actually is a farmer. And I just have one specific question for you right away, Jack. Why did you want us to show that video?
Is it on?
It's on.
I just wanted everybody to kind of get a peek to what farming is, kind of, what we do every day. That wasn't my family, it wasn't me specifically, but as an industry, just kind of a window to see kind of what we sacrifice and what we do every day. And I knew since I was in grade school early, like 3rd, 4th grade, that I was going to do what my dad did, what my granddad did, and be a farmer.
Wonderful. So why do you farm?
So I have a vision and a mission statement that me and the rest of my family came up with as a family together. And our vision is we believe in honoring God by tending his garden and livestock that he has entrusted to us through producing quality crops and nutritious milk that feed the world. And our mission statement at Pirtle Farms, our mission is to cultivate the highest quality cattle feed for our customers and to produce milk that is wholesome for our community, to achieve yields to support our country partners, employees, and their families, creating a safe environment, being ever mindful of our purpose here on earth. Then Jehovah took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it, Genesis 2:15. So I think as a family that we were put here, that I was put here to cultivate his land that he entrusted me and my family, and to produce a crop so we can feed animals and everybody else so they can eat cheese and drink milk.
And that is a blessing, by the way. So would you say that your why, your big purpose for living, is in alignment with what you do every single day?
Why I get up in the morning is to glorify God, to work hard, to produce what I do for my family and for the community. And what we saw in the video, sometimes 14, 16 hours. And, it's easy to kind of get bogged down, but then to look up out of it sometimes and go, this is what it's all about. This is why.
Thank you, Jack. Let's give Jack a hand. I am not saying that Jack is perfect, but he is in the perfect position to glorify God with what he is doing, because he's not just turning up the land and he's not just milking cows. He is glorifying God in what he does. He doesn't need to upgrade anything because he is in the perfect spot to glorify God. And that if that's you, keep going, because God has put you in the position that you are in to glorify himself. And when you do that, he receives glory. But maybe for some of us, we need to upgrade something you do. Maybe there's something in your life that you need to consider upgrading. There's a woman that I'd like to tell you about that met Jesus. And she met Jesus in very rough circumstances, we could say. Jesus went to the temple courts one morning and he was teaching. The temple was the most holy place on the earth at this time. And while he was teaching, the religious leaders brought in a woman caught in the act of adultery. More than likely, she was naked because she was caught in the act. And she is taken and she's thrown at the feet of Jesus while he is teaching. So there's this unholy woman that has done something very unholy, standing in front of the most holy man that ever existed, in the most holy place on earth, surrounded by supposedly the most holy people of the time. And when they throw her down, they say, "This woman was caught in the act of adultery." The law of Moses, that's the Old Testament law, says we should stone her. And they turn to Jesus and they ask him this question: "What do you say we should do with her?" And Jesus bends down and he starts writing something on the ground. And they keep pressing him and saying, "What are we going to do with her?" Then finally Jesus stands up and he makes this statement. He says, "Let him who has no sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Then he bends back down and starts writing in the ground. As he's writing, the people that brought the woman slowly go away, starting with the oldest to the youngest, until none of the accusers are left. Then this woman and Jesus have this interaction. This is what it says. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, "Where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you?" "No, Lord," she said. And Jesus said, "Neither do I." Jesus extends forgiveness to this woman and says, "What you did was wrong, but I forgive you." But Jesus doesn't stop there. He keeps going. He finishes with this: "Go and sin no more." Jesus extends forgiveness, but he does say, what you are doing is a sin, and it needs to go. If you want to experience God's best for your life, there's maybe something in your life that you need to upgrade, because that sin is holding you back from God's best. And here to share with you an example of somebody that's upgraded something in their life is our worship pastor, John Cantu. And I'm going to invite him to come up here. And he's going to share with us something that he had to upgrade in his life. Hi, John.
Hi, Joshua.
Nice man bun.
Thank you. I'm finally keeping it for a long time. Apparently.
Yes, you will. Let's start with the big question. John, why do you exist?
I exist to glorify God and to make him known. So, that kind of is very general, but to me it's very specific in the circles of influence that I have.
Was there
That
ever
makes sense?
Perfect sense. Was there ever a time in your life when what you were doing was not aligning with your purpose, why you were here?
Yes, there was, Josh. Sounds like a commercial right now.
It does.
So
for only $19.95.
you can
have a man bun.
Okay, so
moving on.
Actually, just a couple of months ago, I kind of had a big change in my life, and it's really been incredible. But it's kind of like that story, something that, you kind of made the point that it may not even seem like a big deal. It may not even seem simple, but then all of a sudden, it's cast in the light of who Jesus is, illuminates what your sin is. And that happened to me a couple months ago. I was kind of just taking mental inventory of how many hours I was working, and I was shocked. It was a lot of hours. And I was working Sunday, and Sunday's a long day for me because they're set up in between, first and second service and then third service. So I'm here from like 7 to 7. I mean, it's at least 12 hours. And so Sunday's a long day, and then I'm here on Monday, I'm here Tuesday, I'm here Wednesday, and Wednesday's my practice day, so Wednesday's a long day. And then I'm here on Thursday, and then I was coming in on Friday, sometimes just like a half day on Friday. I'd take like a half day on Friday, and I would take Saturday off. And so I thought, I'm good. But I was exhausted, and I like I said, I took a mental inventory of my hours, and I realized, okay, so just because I'm taking Saturday off doesn't mean that I'm not working like 70 hours. And I don't know how. Somehow I just managed to get up earlier and earlier and work till, almost the same time, like 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And then I'd go home, and it felt the same, but it wasn't the same because I was starting earlier in the day, and some of my days are really long. And so the Lord kind of convicted me because, like I said, why do I exist? I exist to know God. That's first and foremost. I have to know Him. And then secondly, I have to take care of my family, and I have to lead them to Christ. And then thirdly, I have to take care of this family, and I have to lead you guys to Christ. And it was all at a balance. It was all at a balance. And so the Lord convicted me and said, you need to get everything in line with your priorities. And so if your family really is number 2 on that list, then you need to not be exhausted when you spend time with them. So this last week was actually the first time where I was like, okay, I'm going to really just change everything that I do. I'm going to work smarter, not harder. And I got everything done. And by Wednesday, I had already worked a 40-hour work week. And so I was like, what do I do Thursday, Friday, Saturday? So I took off. My parents came in. My friend came in. He's here today. And Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I relaxed. And the spiritual things that came out of that, the blessings that came out of that, were incredible. And so anyway, all that just to say that, something that's really small, the Lord just showed me how big it actually was. And when you're not living your life in accordance with the priorities that God has given you, everything becomes distorted.
So can you say now that in that area of your life you have alignment between why you exist and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if I could sacrifice my family to do greater things for the church, for you guys. I could try to put on a bigger show. I could try to, do more things in organizing and administrating and everything else and sacrifice my family. But that would be a huge loss. And it wouldn't just be a huge loss for my family. It would be a huge loss for the kingdom of God because I would be giving you something distorted. It wouldn't be God's best for you or for my family. And so like the why for everything that I do is kind of balanced again, coming into place.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Let's give him a hand. Maybe you're like John, and when you look at your life, what you're doing, there's part of it that's not in alignment with why you exist. And it's time to upgrade that. But for some of us, maybe it's time to upgrade everything we do. Not nothing, not something. It's time for a major upgrade. Because as you're looking at your life, the trajectory of your life and where you are headed is in the exact opposite direction of what God created you to do. And you know it. And there's small upgrades that you can do, but you know that that's not going to be enough because God has called you to something more. There's someone that can relate with your position. His name was Levi. This is his story. Later, as Jesus left the town, he saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at his tax collector's booth. Now, we look at this and say, oh, tax collector, that's nice. I guess that would be a good profession. No, it wasn't a good profession. It was a great profession. You had position because you worked for Rome. You had power because you had the Roman government backing you, and you had lots of money. You had it all. You had a very comfortable life being a tax collector. Maybe a lot of people didn't like you, just like today. I don't like taxes, but it's the way it is. Levi had a comfortable, sustainable life. Then that all changed, and he made a major upgrade when this happened. Follow me and be my disciple, Jesus said to him. So Levi got up. This is crazy. Left everything. And when it says everything, it means everything. And followed him. The simple invitation went out for Levi. He heard it. He knew it was time to respond. He got up, left comfort, left power, left money, left security, and changed the destiny of his life forever. He upgraded everything. And I'd like to introduce you now to John Drusdom. John is somebody that has had an opportunity on a number of occasions to upgrade everything in his life. And John's going to share a little bit of his story with us now. Hi, John.
Hello, Josh.
So let's start with the first question again.
Okay.
Why do you exist?
I exist to glorify God, to love my wife and family, and to minister to others.
So share a time with us when God called you to upgrade everything.
Okay. As you said, there have been several of these everything upgrades in my life. Sharon and I have been a part of traditional churches since before we were married. We actually met in church, and that's another upgrade everything story, but that's...
So you can find a wife in church.
Yeah.
That's an upgrade.
Yes. It was really an upgrade for me, because I had said I was never getting married and blah, 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 blah. But after being called to full-time ministry from the business world, kind of like Levi, pursuing 2 college degrees with a young family, we served traditional denominational churches for years, either on staff or as, for several of them, I was lead pastor. And while serving on staff at a church in Rio Rancho, God began to work on our hearts, and He called us and said, I have something different for you. And so we went through training and praying about this, and training to be a church planter. And He called us to do something like this service in Austin, Texas. Eventually, that's where we wound up. And He called us out of the traditional church to do a more, if you will, contemporary kind of service. And it did not meet with a lot of, I don't know the word to call it. We weren't approved by denominational pastors. In fact, many of the denominational pastors looked down on us, and we came under ridicule and stuff like that for doing the service, for planning this church. And we wanted to plant a church where people could come just as they were. They didn't have to clean up before they came in and stuff like that. And we also wanted to reach some of the musicians in Austin. Austin, big music town, and we actually started to do that. So it was very interesting.
So when you did that, did you feel a sense of alignment between why God created you and what you were doing?
Yeah, it just seemed like when we got there and when we were doing that, it was just what we were supposed to be doing. We were right in our sweet spot.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Let's give John a
Sure.
hand. I wanted you to hear these stories because these are real people. And everything that we have been talking about tonight isn't theory. Because there is always a why behind what we do. There's always a motivation. And tonight we've looked at upgrading nothing, something, or everything. And if you would be bold enough, I would encourage you to text into 575-420-8159. Text in one aspect of your life that maybe you need to upgrade to create better alignment between why you exist and what you do. This is a secure line. We don't store the numbers, but there's something very powerful of vocalizing through text message what God is asking you to do. And maybe the step that he is asking you to do would be just the encouragement that someone else needs so that they can take that next step. 575-420-8159. Go ahead and pull out your cell phones right now and text in for that. I looked into the future, guys, and one day, we're all going to be old. Some of us are going to be better looking than others, but we're all going to be old. And when we get to this stage, we're not going to be asking the question, why do I exist? We're going to be asking the question, why did I exist? Because we're going to be looking back over our life and say, did it really count? Because in that moment, we can have all of the good intentions that we want, and we can build them up like a house of cards. But then the reality of what we did with our lives, the actions that we performed, are going to be a strong wind that blow through your life. And if your actions did not line up with your bigger purpose, they're going to be knocked down. Because what you do every single day will ultimately point to your larger purpose. And if you want your larger purpose to be fulfilled, if you have a sense of following God and glorifying God, what you do every single day matters. And if you look at your life and say, my why is clear, but what I am doing is not aligning, it's time to make alignment, my friends. Because what you do every single day points to your ultimate why. There is always a why behind our what. There is always a reason for our behavior. There's always motivation for our action. We still have a lot of life left to live. But when you get to the end and ask the question, why did I exist? You can't pull out that piece of paper and say, oh, I hope it was this. Nope. Your actions will speak way louder than your words. And those actions will follow you into eternity. For the good, and maybe not so good. Maybe it's time to consider an upgrade in why you exist and why you do what you do.